recorder. You may have gotten a little tone there that we are recording this meeting. So we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening once again. My name is Jeff Hammond. I am a consultant working on behalf of the Nashville Department of Transportation. That's the NDOT that you see down there in the bottom right-hand corner. And we're going to talk for a few minutes here this evening about traffic calming, the potential for traffic calming on Hicks Road. And as we just mentioned there a little bit about how this project came to be and where we are, and most importantly, your input on that. I've got a couple of housekeeping things. You do have the ability to unmute yourself if you are there on the sidebar where you see people's faces or names. You should see a little microphone symbol, and feel free to unclick that. I'd like to keep these meetings as informal as we can. That said, if you're not making a comment, if you would keep that microphone muted, it usually makes for a little bit of cleaner recording. And I think that's really it. And I did mention we are recording this meeting. We keep these and we will post this meeting online with all the others. And so if you have a neighbor that wasn't able to join us tonight and you think would like to see the presentation, that will be available to you and to them. So that's why we do that. And we'll give you some instructions about how to access that recording here in just a few minutes. A little bit of an agenda, what we'll try to cover in the next 40 minutes or so. I know y'all are able to get downtown to CMA Fest more than likely, so we'll try to get this pretty quickly. Just some overview information about the program and how Hicks Road got inducted into it. We'll talk most importantly about the problems that you see on your street, and we'll talk about some of the tools that we have at our disposal in this program that might counter some of those things. And then I'll show you a very preliminary concept for something that we think might make for a good project, and then we'll wrap up by talking about the next steps. The little QR code that you see there on the right is also may also be helpful to you. That is what we call an Engage Nashville page. It's essentially just a project web page, and if you scan that and go to that, you will have the ability to give us any kind of feedback that you want to problem areas and those kinds of things. As the project progresses, you can also find more information there. We'll put the design concept and so forth at that location as well. All right, a little bit about the program. We do focus on residential streets. We had a question just a minute ago about the types of tools that we use. Most typically, we use physical solutions. That is, when we can and where the conditions are fitting, we will use things that we put in the street that you drive over or that you drive around. Speed cushions are our #1 tool. Probably most people are familiar with those. We'll talk more about those. Those are the types of things that we use because we find them to be the most effective. And we are focused on speed reduction. We're not trying to shift traffic to one street or another. We're just trying to get it to stay where it is and slow down and drive more appropriately through your neighborhood. We know that putting things on the road and the engineering side is the only way to go about this. Education is a big component, and enforcement is huge. And we all wish, most people on these calls anyway, wish that we had more ability to have MNPD out, park a cruiser, and write tickets. That would be a big help to maybe curbing some of the speeding activity. Unfortunately, as you all probably know, there is for Metro Police Department to do that. So they're doing a lot of other important work out there. So, one of the reasons we do this program and NDOT has put such an emphasis on slower speeds is just because of the safety implications. And so this graphic speaks to that in the very unfortunate situation that there is a pedestrian vehicle collision. We know that the chance of survivability is way up as speeds are slower. But that, along with just being a quality of life issue, we hear it practically every meeting. Neighbors say that, I can't go for a walk along the street. I can't do a lot of things. I may not even feel comfortable going out to my mailbox and checking the mail because speeding can be such an issue at times. And so That's why I think this program has been such a popular one. And this slide speaks to that. Right now in our program, we have over 600 streets just like Hicks that people have asked the city to look into the speeding situation. And so we opened this application window up twice a year. You all applied into that. I'm not sure exactly when. In some cases, these are a couple of years old, but neighbors on Hicks have applied into this program. At that point, we go out and we do a lot of data collection. I'll show you some of that. And we pick the top 25 streets that have a demonstrated speeding issue. And so Hicks, unfortunately or fortunately, is one of those. I mean, I guess if you feel like there is a speeding issue, then you're glad that we're here and offering this project to you. And so we like to share this just so that you know you're not the only ones experiencing these issues. This is a countywide situation. In practically every neighborhood in Nashville, there are people who complain about the speeding activity. At this point, we also like to just remind you about Hub Nashville. If you're not familiar with it, it's a tremendous resource for those of us in Davidson County. You can call 311 and talk to someone, or you can go to hub.Nashville.gov. And it's a great clearinghouse for all things metro government, not just NDOT or transportation, but practically every other department is represented there. And we say that here because there are sometimes things that we cannot handle in the traffic calming program. A common request we get it for stop signs. We don't do that as part of this program. Another common request we get sidewalks, and if we just had sidewalks, the speeding might not feel as intense. Unfortunately, sidewalks are not part of our toolbox in this program either, but those are the types of things that you can go to Hub Nashville and put in that online request, and then a member of Metro staff will follow up with you on that. But back to how Metro got selected as a potential project. This is the data that we collect, at least a snapshot of the data that we collect on every project that comes in as an application. And so this shows you the types of things that we look at, the weighting that we give to those. About 70% of the scoring that we use are things that are probably pretty apparent, the amount of traffic on the road and the speed at which that traffic is driving. And then the other 30% have to do with more of those vulnerable users. Are there sidewalks on the street, for instance? Or is it on a transit route or close to it? And then are there things that someone may want to walk to? Are there libraries in the area or a park or a school? All of those types of things are taken into consideration when we pick which projects are going to move forward with a potential traffic calming solution. So Hicks was in the upper bounds of that. Here's the actual data that we collected on Hicks. And again, this project is going Old Harding Pike to Bellevue Road. That was the section that qualified. And speed to be 42 miles an hour. That's what we call the 85th percentile speed, which is just a statistical way that we look at it. What it essentially says is 15% of the traffic on the street is going faster than 42. That's kind of a traffic engineering threshold that we use to determine whether or not there's a speeding issue. The volume on the street, there are 1,100, a little over 1,100 cars a day. That sounds like a lot, but we will do this type of traffic calming on streets up to 5,000 cars a day. So we're well within the bounds of our typical traffic calming projects. The street width is about 22 feet wide. That's pretty typical for a street in Nashville. Now, I will say Hicks has some kind of unique features. It is as you and I know, almost rural. It really feels like you're much further away and much further out of some of Nashville neighborhoods than you actually are. That's a very nice feature of Hicks. But in that, it feels, there's a great tree canopy. There are huge goes up and down some hills, and so that 22 feet, it may feel narrower than, but we will take that into consideration as we develop a traffic calming project. And then this link that we're looking at is just over 0.8 of a mile. Just to put all that on a map, I know this may not be the clearest, but this is a snapshot from an online interactive map that is available to you at the Traffic Calming website. And you can go in there and you can pan around and you can see all of the traffic calming projects as well as their status. If you look in there right now, Hicks Road is colored red, which just means we're at this stage. We're in the public input stage and developing what a project might look like. Some of the other colors that might be important, there see some purple lines, and those indicate a street has been applied for, but it has not been selected yet. We have data on those streets, but they have not risen to the level of getting a street, getting a project selected on. Let me stop at this point and give you the opportunity to ask any questions about the process or about that data, or share any information as you're looking at the limits of our project here about where problem areas might be and any ideas you may have had for traffic calming.
I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, you mentioned, I think you called them speed cushions, is that right?
Yes, sir. No, we'll look at those in just a second, but that's correct.
Oh, okay. Do you know which section of Hicks they would be?
Well, if we use a cushion design, we will find that those work best when we put them, pretty regularly at regular intervals along the street. So
That's all. Two of those are mine.
Idea would be that it would go from one end to the other. But I'm going to show you some kind of conditions on that.
We had we own about 8 acres here, and we've just gone under contract on another 8. We're at the corner right by where Patton, right where that arrow is. We're at where Patton enters in there. We have the 3 parcels right there, and so we've got a pretty big block on Hicks Road. I have an email history that goes back to 2015 or 16, where we were getting the councilmen involved and noting that there had been over 17 wrecks right in this area at the time. And then in 2017, Carol, my wife, found the gentleman who had died there, the fatality there in the ravine on his motorcycle. And then after that, and after some news stories and some the city engineers did come out finally, and Dave, the councilman, had been very involved in trying to get them, and he had been hearing us. It was just getting them to react to it. And finally, after the fatality, they put up those chevron signs, the 3, to help people navigate that corner. But we had numerous wrecks, people crashing in the front yard, and a lot of them go unreported because a lot of, a number of them are impaired, and so but we were experiencing but the chevron signs did help a lot. We haven't had much out there since the fatality in the past 5 or 6 years. And so you were asking for problem areas. Those S curves are a big problem, and
Okay.
and where it intersects with Patton.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I'm glad it's helped some. What we often find though, is if we can slow speeds down in general all along Hicks, specific issues like that will be improved as well. And so we can continue to look at some spot treatments there, but often that's the case. If we can just slow traffic at all, it tends to help everything. But thanks for that. Everybody else good? We'll move ahead. Okay. Let's talk about some of the tools that we might think about. The first one we've already mentioned, the speed cushions. This is really the bread and butter of our program. It has become that way anyway, and I'm sure you all have encountered these on some of the streets around town. We've been using these now for about 5 years regularly, this style of speed cushion. This is a preformed, molded, it's a very high density recycled rubber product. It comes off of a manufacturer's line, so it looks the same and it drives the same in every situation. We really like that consistency. They really hold up well, and they come in a couple of different configurations, and you see some images of that here. They're all pretty much work the same, but when it comes to that width we were talking about a minute ago, or you know, just different configurations, the shoulder condition makes a difference. We might use 2, 3, or in some cases more speed cushions across the width of the road. The main idea here is that we just don't want anybody to be able to drive around them. Now, in your case on Hicks, I think 1 speed cushion in each lane is more than adequate. The edge condition is not such, I think, in most cases, that someone's going to drive around. Again, the ditches are pretty steep, and there really is no shoulder. We will take a look at that in more detail, you know, if we decide to go with speed cushions and progress that into a design. But I would fully expect that you would be looking at 1 cushion in each direction, much like the picture in the left-hand corner. Those speed cushions are only 3 inches tall. Most people will tell you that's enough, though, to make a difference. And they're 6 feet wide, which means that most vehicles cannot straddle. Really, no vehicle you know of can totally straddle them. However, some large vehicles like ambulances and fire trucks are not as impacted as much, and that's the reason why there's that break in them, and not a consistent piece all the way across. We like that. We have kind of vetted that with our emergency responders and our fire department and so forth. They have no problem with these, and so we really like to continue with the speed cushions if we're going to use something that's raised in the road for that reason. Most of our cars cannot do as good a job straddling them, and so we have to slow down to about 20 miles an hour. And most people will say if you do that, if you drive over them at about 20, you know they're there, but it's not nearly so bad. What we do encounter sometimes is people coming to almost a stop and just barely crawling over them, and that's really not necessary in most vehicles. Maybe some ultra low riding car might go slower than that, but we do sign those at 20 miles an hour. We also can vary the length of them. I mentioned they're all 6 feet wide, but we can make them longer. And what the additional length does is sometimes in more urban areas, we might compress those with a shorter speed cushion. In more rural areas, we might lengthen those and go with a longer speed. The longer the cushion, typically the less, I guess, aggressive it is, and allows a little bit of a higher speed. So that's a design consideration that we have. In this case, I would not recommend shortest. We really reserve those for our more dense neighborhoods, downtown and those types of places. But we do have a choice in terms of a 10.5 or a 14-foot speed cushion like Hicks. A very close cousin is something I've kind of already mentioned. That's a speed table, which does go all the way across the side of the street. We've really gotten away from using these in most cases for the emergency response consideration that I mentioned. However, there are some cases where we will use these. Parks are a good example. You may have seen some of these in some of the metro parks where that emergency response is not that big of a deal. So we do keep it in the toolbox, but we strongly prefer the speed cushion. We do have some before and after data. I always caution looking at this. It really depends on the street and on the configuration and how fast traffic was going before and all of that kind of stuff. But we are seeing, on average, a 9 or 12 mile an hour reduction when we put a speed cushion on the street. So, but most people will just tell you, you can just tell it slows traffic down. Another tool that we have is not as impactful in terms of maybe the objections to it, but also some people might say, well, it doesn't have as great an effect on speed either. But that is the radar feedback sign. This falls into that category information we were talking about earlier. Sometimes just giving a driver some feedback about how fast they are really going can help communicate that message that you really need to slow down. And so we will use these at times. It's some cases where we might would be as if the traffic volume is over 5,000 cars a day, and we do not use raised cushion for a road like that. Or if the street is just too steep or too windy, or there's too many driveways, if for whatever reason we can't put speed cushions or circles or something else in, we might use a radar feedback sign. Some people swear by them and say that it has absolutely made a wonderful difference on their street. Others are kind of like, that did it first, but the newness is kind of worn off, and I'm not sure if it still does. So we're still collecting some of that before and after data about the longevity of that benefit. Another tool is pavement markings. Whether we introduce new pavement markings on a street that did not have them, or a lot of times we'll just refresh the pavement markings that are out there. One of the ideas here being that sometimes a very wide street, or what appears to be a wide street, can encourage faster speeds. And so if we put markings on and something that visually narrows the street or narrows the lanes, that can have a positive impact. And so we will do that occasionally. We have to be careful if we're putting in something like a center line, though, because sometimes that communicates that it's a more major street than it actually is. And so we don't want to falsely encourage people to go faster. Pavement markings are in the program. And then a specialized use of pavement markings would be bulb outs. This is more of an urban treatment, usually, where you have a lot more pedestrians in an area, and curb and gutter. But occasionally, if we have a very wide, sweeping type of an intersection, and we have high speeds turning onto or turning off of a street, we will try to, again, visually and sometimes physically reduce the width of that intersection by kind of shrinking them, by extending the curb inward a little, making people slow down as they make those turns. I don't think we have an option here for that. I don't think your streets are wide enough, and really you only have the one intersection on the street. So, but anyway, just something to keep in mind. And then chicanes are even more specialized treatment, usually in an urban area, that kind of introduces an artificial meandering of traffic. Works okay if you've got enough width, like you see here, for some parking. And those parked cars kind of become a part of the treatment there. There's a couple of these in Davidson County, not very many. And then the last one is traffic circles, and it's one that we kind of have a start and stop relationship with. Metro has put in a few of these, and then has not in the past few years, as we sort of watch how they perform. It can have some unintended consequences. Things like school buses and large vehicles like that have a very long wheelbase can have a problem navigating these. You just have to have a very large intersection, and that's what it's really for. To cut down on the available width on these really big intersections. Again, I'm not sure it would fit here on Hicks. So those are some of the tools, and here's a very preliminary concept. I show this and really want to caution that this is one option, and I think it does fit. It looks a lot like what we've proposed on a lot of other streets, similar to this, where it's a suburban to rural type of a context. We keep that in mind. You've got nice big setbacks off of the street for the houses. So we try to do something that kind of blends in with the neighborhood, and at the same time brings in lower speeds. So this is a pretty typical traffic calming type of an alternative. What you're looking at is the purple line is Hicks Road. Keep in mind, I have turned it 90 degrees to try to make it a little bit bigger. So Old Harding is there to the left. You see that stop sign on the left-hand side of your picture. And to the right-hand side is Bellevue Road down there where it then ends into that. So you're looking at it 90 degrees from what you were a minute ago. The little trapezoids with a C are very rough proposed locations for speed cushions. And then the yellow bars that are underneath the line just indicate to us there are some some slope in that area. So let me talk a little bit about how we came up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 locations of speed cushions. What we do to start with, we can get the total length of the road. In this case, it's about 4,200 feet long. And then we divide that by what our desired spacing is. We know that if we put speed cushions in at somewhere in the order of 400 to 600, maybe a little more, maybe a little less feet, then we will get a good consistent progression. That is not too close together, that it's just totally obnoxious to you all who have to drive on these every day and might push traffic somewhere else. Also, it's not so far apart that someone will slow down to go over a set of speed cushions and then really step on the gas to fly to the next one. We tend to see that if we're in a 400 to 600 foot range, traffic slows down when they encounter the first one and then stays reasonably slow throughout the rest of the street. But then you have to look at it in terms of like those slopes, sharp curves, those types of things, and avoid those. We have a policy that we try not to put speed cushions on anything greater than 5% slope, and we absolutely will not on anything at 8% or greater. And so I think we can avoid those. We can avoid the steepest parts of your street, as you see here, by doing that. But we just keep that in mind. And then the last thing we look at as well are driveway locations, and I mentioned that we do not want this to block anybody's driveway. We would really be close to anybody's driveway if we can help it. But at all costs, as you can imagine, there's a lot of streets in Nashville that it's one driveway after the next, and we really have a policy that we will stay at least 15 feet away. We're not going to have any problem on the street staying well away from people's driveways. Again, you have a lot of frontage in your lots, and I think we got plenty of room to work with. And so the speed cushions that you're seeing, are set in just a little bit from the intersections. We don't want them too far because we want to kind of set the tone as people turn on to Hicks from either Bellevue or Old Harding, that they encounter a speed cushion and they for the rest of the time that it is a slower street. And then, we are more on the edge of that 600-foot spacing. I tend to like that for a little rural type of a feel. We might consider them closer together, but again, we have some limitations with where we put them, grades and so forth. But for what it's worth, that's what we have. Any thoughts on that? Any reactions to that? Ayes, nays, other ideas? The floor is yours.
The sooner the better.
Hi, quick question. Can you explain what the plow options for winter weather would be? There's still access for those
Good
vehicles?
question. Yes, there is, and I take that to mean Hicks is a plow route. I don't know. You all would know, and so I will assume it is. And so we do put these on plow routes. NDOT is very aware of that. Anytime speed cushions go in on a street that is plowed, it's put in their GIS, and those drivers have that on board and available to them in their maps. And so they know in those cases when we have winter weather and they are plowing, they are on a street that has speed cushions. And so it's just about to plow up as they go through those. We haven't had any real issues with our cushions being plowed up, nor does it change your plow status. One other aspect to that is in most cases, we will sign these as well. Saw a picture a few slides ago. I can go back of this picture in the upper left-hand corner. That looks a lot like your an implementation would look on, including a sign there. And so that gives another good indication. We try to get those speed cushion signs pretty close to, if not right at the actual cushion location. That just gives another clue that, hey, there's something there. If it were to be obscured by leaves, it would take a ton of leaves, but leaves or snow or anything like that.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
What is the
Another
time
question?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't see a hand raised, but Yolanda Coxway, I wanted to know in the beginning at the old Harding and Hicks intersection, there is an area there that just for whatever reason will not stay level. It has a dip. I wanted to know if you all will treat that or better prepare that area before you lay down the speed bumps in my turn.
Agreed. I agree with her.
Okay. Yeah, I was not aware of that. That's great to know. It's kind of like an inverse speed cushion. Yeah, like we have one built in. We'll look at that. I will mention that. Now, I will say from a speed cushion installation, if it's right at the intersection, we won't be very close to it. But our first speed cushion won't be for at least about 300 feet. Inside of that, probably a little bit more. So we don't like to put speed cushions or any traffic calming right at an intersection. In that case, we've got an all-way stop there, I know. So we don't want traffic backing up or cars sitting on it or anything. That's good.
I'm sorry, it's not at the intersection. It's towards that intersection. So it's past the there is some townhomes there. So
Okay.
once you pass that entrance, you'll see it. It's hard to miss it. They've tried to repair it, but for whatever reason, the dip comes back.
Okay, interesting.
Absolutely.
I'll take a look at that, and I'll put a flag out to our project managers there at NDOT. At all costs, we will avoid it if it's that obvious when we're out there looking at it. We won't spot something to go right there on it. But beyond that, let me put that into the roadway manager there and see what the status is on that, if they have anything works. I'm sure the district guys are aware of it. I don't know if they have anything in the works to try and treat that. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Hey, Jeff, it's
Yeah.
Sherry.
Yes.
There are a couple of spots along the entire way where the side of the road caves in. And one of my concerns that I had mentioned to Director Alarcon when she and I rode out there, and I was showing her the issue with Hicks Road, one of the things that we talked about was the unevenness and the sides. So it may be that we want to bring Deb or somebody back out with you, and Sandy and I can meet you up there and show you what we're talking about.
Okay, perfect. I'll make a note of that the pavement condition on all of that. I'll also look at, sometimes we'll check this. We'll certainly check it before we get into thinking about an implementation. Would be the paving schedule. I don't know if it's anywhere in the paving forecast or not, but it sounds like these are also just edge conditions that need to be looked at. So that's great input. Thank you, council member.
No.
Question?
Yes,
I
I
have a
do.
question.
Go ahead. The problem with the area that has been talked about is that several attempts have been made to make that better, and it never works. And so I don't know if it's more of a, engineering kind of a thing or what, but it's horrible for our cars. It's annoying, and I would love for you all to give some real effort to it, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Yes, I agree again.
I can say, and hey, y'all, it's Sherry. I can say that when I took Director Alarcon, who's the head of NDOT, out to Bellevue, and we drove the entire length of Hicks Road, and I said to her in 3 words, "It's got to go." And she looked at me and I said, "Let's just drive up and let me show you how bad it is." And so they're fully aware, because we have the whole team with us. They're fully aware that Hicks needs serious help.
Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Okay.
What is the time frame for the installation of these remedies? How
Yeah,
soon or how late could it occur?
Yeah, good question. I'll go ahead and answer that, and then if there are more questions about the image that you're looking at or the plan or anything like that, we'll certainly be glad to come back to it. But our next slide talks about this. Up until that last comment about major reconstruction of the road bed and drainage and whatever would be involved in that, that might have some bearing on this, but it might not. I'll talk about that. And so this is a little bit of a flow chart that we use to kind of describe the process and where we are. So tonight, right now, we're at this red circle here. This is our neighborhood meeting. After tonight, if there is consensus on what we want to do in terms of like the speed cushion project, or if somebody says, no, I think we ought to do something else, we can discuss that. But if we have consensus, leave here tonight to the design process. That's going to take a few weeks to work on that. At that point, we have an option. We can get back together if you want to, but a lot of times we find in neighborhoods they say no, speed cushions are speed cushions. We trust you guys to know what you're doing, and you can put a pretty simple plan together. Let's move ahead to ballot. We can do that. But if you want to look at it, or you have other questions, or we want to talk more about that unraveling and the pavement issues that we'll be glad to come back again to a second meeting. Whichever way we decide to go, after we have the design plan in place, we open it up to an online ballot. I'll cover that in just a minute. That is a mandatory 6-week process, just the ballot itself. And then lastly, if it does pass the ballot, where you all get to have a say in this project, and it does pass, we go into the construction queue. That's the longest part of the process. So to the question about how soon this could go into effect, we may well be looking the better part of the year. We have been assigning 8 to 10 months in just construction queue. It might be a little sooner than that. NDOT has brought on some additional contractors, and I think into that backlog quite a bit. But I don't want you to think that by school getting back in session in August that you're going to have cushions out there. It will not be that fast. We're probably looking at least 8 to 10 months from this point.
Thank you.
Good question. Let me keep going. No, well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Let me cut you off.
No, I was just saying I had a question. It's probably on Miss Wiener's side of the street there with the View Apartments. That I don't know if that's a private road or a public road from the whole back. That's across from our driveway. They had, when they did their access, after it changed from Iroquois over to the View Apartments, they did all that. They also put gated entrance up on that side, and for a long time it was one way and it was gated so that they would only come on to Hicks but not come up here to access Hicks. And I would think part of traffic calming is how much traffic is going to be there to begin with. And my question is, do you have any insight into what they're doing with the apartments and how, and whether they're going to continue? Because what they do now, leave it open, and it's 2 ways in and out all the time off of and that's about where his letter C is, right there, right in the middle. That's what was the Iroquois Apartments. That's where they come down, and our driveway sits right about where that C is. And so there's a lot of traffic coming in and out of the apartments right there, as opposed to out on Old Hickory, where the main entrance is. I just didn't know if anybody knew what their plan was with that or why it changed.
So I can jump in here. I'm assuming everybody knows that there's been a pretty serious issue with the homeless camping up on that property. And
Yeah.
so we have a meeting, I think it's by Zoom, with the owners to get answers to some of these questions and to get an update on how fast they're going to get these guys moved out. Some of them have already been moved out in the last couple of days because they were arrested. But I can say that when we sit down and talk to them, I can sure ask, about this particular piece of it, because they haven't. This will be the first time I've physically talk to them.
And we may be talking about two different sections here, ma'am. The one down lower, I think, you know, kind of where those first two C's are in that yellow area,
Right.
there is homeless going on in there right now. If you go up to where
Mhm.
Patton is, and you
Right.
go a little higher right there, they did have
Mhm.
some squatters going on in that vacant house right there, and they cleared that out. But
Right.
what I'm talking about is that private drive that goes up right where that C is, right in the middle. It goes up to the top. It goes up into the apartments, and that was what my
That's where I'm
question
talking
was.
about.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Great.
That's where I'm talking about, specifically where I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll find out.
And I guess my question is, is that going to continue to be a two-way, or are they going to treat it as a one-way with the gate? Because
Yeah, I'll find out.
that affects. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. If y'all want to send me your email addresses, then I can respond to everybody and get y'all an update. If
Perfect.
you'll email me at SHERI dot Weiner, WEINER at Nashville.gov, and let me know you were in the traffic calming meeting. I'll copy it over to Sandy as well, and we can get y'all an answer.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for doing this, by the way. It's great.
I'm sorry, Sherry, I got too late to my pen. Can you please repeat your email address?
Sure. It's SHERI dot Weiner, WEINER at Nashville.gov.
Thank you.
All right, one more thing I want to be sure that we cover before we break up here is the balloting process. This often gets a lot of questions, and so as toward the end of this process, a few weeks from now, we will move into this online ballot. Anybody who owns property that abuts Hicks Road between these limits, in other words, it's in the limits of the project, will receive one of these. You would get a card in the mail. Hopefully, you got maybe a card for this meeting. You would get a similar card here that has an opportunity to vote. And so it's got a QR code, but you can also call if you want to vote by mail. And you basically just give them your address information and then say if you're for the project or not. And if that stays open for 6 weeks, and if at the end of 6 weeks we close the voting, count those votes, and if 2/3 of the people are in favor of it, we will move that project ahead. That's how that voting process works. There's not a set number of votes that we're looking for. It's just like a real election. It's just 2/3 of the people, carry the vote on that. The people that would apply to, this is a little bit different. We like to explain it sometimes. We mentioned here apartment complexes. That apartment complex owner would get one vote, the same as any of you. However, there is the condominium complex up at Old Harding. We would ballot every owner of a unit in the condominiums because they all own in part property that does abut the project. So that's the distinction there about how we do that. I think there's one case where we have a horizontal property here, in other words, two units or two dwellings have been built on one parcel. Again, both of those owners of those units would get to vote as well. This isn't the full picture. This is just about the first half of the image. But anyway, that same idea carries all the way from Old Harding to Bellevue about who gets to vote. If the lot is vacant, in other words, there's not a building on it, we will not send the ballot to that owner. And then if there's any businesses and things like that, those folks don't vote either. There's my information. If we break up from here and you think of another question or have a comment, want to leave that for us, feel free. But again, as I mentioned at the beginning, let's see if I have it again. Yeah, right here is probably a better slide because this also gives you the opportunity again for that Engage Nashville page. And feel free to use that. You can put comments on a map specific to a location or anything like that. We will check that as well. So feel free to reach out to us.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there flexibility in the plan that you're proposing as far as where the speed cushions are positioned? Can there be fewer speed cushions, or are you still considering the radar signs, or are you pretty much going towards these speed cushions?
Well, that's a little bit up to you all. What we would typically say is if we're going to do speed cushions, we need them regularly enough that we have an impactful project. If we just go out and we put 2 sets, maybe one at the beginning and one at the end, we don't really feel like we've accomplished very much. But can we lengthen that a little bit? Maybe. I probably wouldn't recommend going too much closer together, but right now we're kind of at the outer limit at 600 feet. But if we looked at reducing one and spreading them out a little bit, I don't think it would totally destroy the intent of the project. So it's a little bit of an art more than a science at this point. And yes, we can look at speed back signs. Typically, we would do that if we're not using a cushion. We don't usually use both because we know that if we put a cushion, we will get slower speeds, and we don't necessarily need to tell people that they're going 20 or 25 or 30 miles an hour. We're trying to slow down, those much faster vehicles. But
well, there are specific. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you have a specific location you think we ought to try to avoid, or an issue or something like that.
Well, there are certain areas that may have like blind driveways, coming around a corner where you want people to slow down. And then there are areas where people naturally slow down because of the incline or the curve. You don't necessarily need it there. So you kind of have to look at the road and, how it's traveled, where people speed up and where people can't see. I know coming out of our driveway at Devon Woods North, you're coming around the corner and people take it so fast. I mean, it's just a matter of time before you have an accident. And you have deer crossing. So, there are specific parts of this road where you do want people to slow down.
Is there a speed cushion here that you think is in a location maybe that it's on a hill or something that you really don't need as much?
What would you say? I mean, from this picture, it just seems like there are a lot of them just south of Old Harding Pike. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So that would be these first 3.
Yeah. I don't know. Like the gentleman off Patton Lane, maybe one affects him right there. But I don't know. The one so close to the stop sign, I don't know that that's necessary.
Well, and it may be that if you turn on to Hicks Road from, I don't know how close any houses are or anything like that. If it's really not, and speeding is not that much of a concern before you get to the grade there, maybe that is a good place to drop one. So typically we put them as you come onto the street, kind of set that tone. But in this case, if there's no houses there, anybody that is really impacted by it, that may be a good suggestion.
Okay. I guess my question is, do you still have flexibility as far as the planning?
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
Okay.
This is totally a draft plan. You all are the first ones to see it. This is the first time we've showed it. We're not married to it at all.
Okay. Thank you.
I will say we've got to move. I mean, we want to move forward with the project with something, but yeah, we can absolutely change it, and that's the purpose of tonight's meeting. And so I hear that, and I appreciate that. and we can certainly look at removing that one. And it sounds like there may be consensus that we do continue to stay toward a little bit longer spacing in between, that we're not pushing that, on the 400-foot end of the spectrum, that we stay at 600 feet, maybe a little bit further. Now, let me ask you this too. What's the thought about a shorter versus a longer speed cushion? It sounds like by that comment, you may be more interested in a 14-foot cushion, which is the longest one and is the least aggressive. Is that a good assumption?
Yeah. What do you think? I don't know.
I think that's totally appropriate given the setting that we're looking at here. So we'll look toward that direction. I think that's good feedback.
Okay.
Anybody else? Well, I don't want to keep us any longer than I need. I'd talk more about it. Sorry, did I interrupt someone?
You're unmuted.
Just excellent. You did a great job explaining all
Thank
that.
you.
Very, very helpful. So thank you.
Well,
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all for taking your
Yeah.
time with us tonight and your interest in this project and interest in safety on your street. We'll do our best to make a good project out of this. Feel free again to email me or the folks there at NDOT using this contact information, and please avail yourselves of that Engage Nashville. You'll find it's a pretty great resource. With that, I will wish you all a very good evening. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you.